Scare me.
Are you ready?
Okay, go ahead. What are you doing?
Hello, fellow 80s enthusiasts. Dan here from 80s Vault. And today, I'm taking you on a spine-chilling journey back to the movies that scared the crap out of me as a kid growing up in the 80s. Now, these may not be the scariest movies by today's standards, or even the scariest of the decade. But back then, they left a lasting impression on my young mind. We were less desensitized back then, and the practical effects felt just too real, making these films truly haunting to me. So I'm going to count down from 20 to 1, ranking these films from the least to the most frightened I've felt and how they impacted me. So are you ready to revisit some nightmares? Let's dive in. So at number 20, we've got The Gremlins. Now, this was a dark, humorous film which introduced us to Gizmo, that adorable Mogwai with some very special care instructions. But break those rules and you unleash chaos. As a kid, the idea that cute creatures could turn into mischievous monsters if you fed them after midnight was both fascinating and unsettling. And then I became a parent, and I realized it's true, but it's just with your own kids. By the way, interesting fact, this film was so influential that, along with Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, it led to the creation of PG-13 rating due to its blend of horror and comedy elements.
Well, I have something here, Harry. Take your mind off of it. Come on, Richard, please. It's showtime!
So number 19 brings us Creepshow, a horror anthology brought to us by the master of horror, Stephen King, and the legend, George Romero. The movie is a collection of eerie tales that had something to unsettle everyone. The segment where Leslie Nielsen's character does that chilling revenge by burying Ted Danson up to his neck on the beach, that one stuck with me. The helplessness and impending doom was terrifying. By the way, Stephen King not only wrote the screenplay, but he also starred in the segment The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill, and that basically showcased his acting chops. That guy is creepy as heck, man. Number 18 brings us a punk-infused take on the zombie genre that was both entertaining and frightening. Return of the Living Dead introduced us to the concept of zombies who craved to eat brains. They were fast-moving, they could talk, and this was a complete departure from the traditional slow walkers we were used to for the last 20 years. This amped up the fear factor and added a new layer to zombie lore. You know, it's a really interesting fact about this movie is that this is where the whole idea of eating brains came from. And by the way, send more cops.
Charlie, this is our next door neighbor, Jerry Dandridge.
Hello, Charlie.
At number 17, we've got Fright Night, which I really love this movie. This was about a horror story in the suburbs where I lived. And as a teenage boy, he discovered that his neighbor was a vampire. Unfortunately, there was a huge mix of skepticism between his friends and the adults that there was an actual danger lurking next door. But I could tell you what, the special effects and the transformation scenes were so impressive in this movie. It definitely added to the creep factor.
Did you hear that? I heard that. What was it? Could be a lot of things. Yeah? A coyote. There aren't any coyotes in England. The Hound of the Baskervilles?
Pecos Bill?
Heathcliff.
Heathcliff didn't howl.
No, but he was on the moors.
So at 16, we've got the classic An American Werewolf in London, which struck a balance between horror and some dark comedy. But I gotta tell you, that transformation scene was absolutely groundbreaking and truly horrifying. They showed this in painful detail, how he metamorphosized into a werewolf. It left me and many people wary of backpacking through unfamiliar territories. And by the way, this movie won the first ever Academy Award for Best Makeup, thanks to Rick Baker's incredible work. So 14 brings us The Howling, which is another werewolf classic. Essentially, The Howling follows a news reporter who, after some traumatic event, retreats to a colony that harbors this dark werewolf secret. The atmosphere was filled with tension, but these transformation scenes, they just were so scary. And I have to admit, I saw this movie when I was way too young to see this movie. And it gave me nightmares that I actually think I still have nightmares from this movie, like 40 years later. Just a note, don't let your kids watch movies like this. Probably isn't on any of your lists, but this movie totally scared me when I was young. And the reason why is it tapped into this fear of isolation at the end of the world. So this comet comes out and it wipes out like most of humanity except for anybody who was inside something metal. And the story follows these two sisters who find themselves among the last few survivors. And they're walking around these empty cities and they encounter some good people and some zombie-like people. But really it was the idea of being the last person on Earth. And it was absolutely terrifying to me as a kid. Number 12 brings us The Predator, which was a perfect blend of action and horror. So The Predator introduced an alien hunter that stalked this team of commandos, led by none other than Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the suspense of an invisible enemy and the totally gruesome deaths made this a super intense movie to watch. And after watching this, I had second thoughts about playing in the woods by myself. So let's talk about number 11, The Twilight Zone, the movie. This was an anthology that recreated some of the most memorable episodes from the original TV series. I know that we started this film off with that one about seeing something scary, but I think the segment about the nightmare at 20,000 feet, which was the creature on the wing of a plane, that freaked me out. Every time I flew after that, I'd glance nervously at the wings just to make sure there was nothing out there. So this movie is infamous for a tragic accident that happened during filming that led to the death of the actor Vic Morrow and two child actors, resulting in significant changes to safety regulations in the film industry.
I said talk to me, damn it! All right, then I'm gonna make you talk. I said talk to me, damn it, or else I'm gonna throw you in the fire!
So entering the top 10, So at number 9, I've got The Evil Dead. And maybe it should be number 1, but I'm going to keep it at number 9. So this was a Sam Raimi film, which was done with a low budget, but it was super high on the scares. So basically these people were isolated in a cabin in the woods, and there was this demonic possession that was so scary. And there were 2 scenes that literally drove me crazy. It was that one where they're trying to guess the cars and the girl starts calling them out super fast. And it was that frickin' creature in the floor under the grate, and it had its hand sticking out, and it had all of these sarcastic, scary responses. Anyways, that movie was relentless, and it stuck with me forever. Here's an interesting fact, by the way. The blood used in the film was a mixture of corn syrup, non-dairy creamer, and red food coloring, which made filming messy and attracted lots of insects. I mean, they filmed it in the woods, right? So number 8, we've got The Fly with Jeff Goldblum. And he portrayed a scientist who was slowly transforming into a human fly that was both tragic and horrifying. The graphic depiction of his change showcased body horrors at its peak. It was a cautionary tale about the perils of playing God. And by the way, this film won an Academy Award for Best Makeup, highlighting the outstanding and gruesome special effects. Good job, Jeff.
Gage! Gage!
No, you don't, my friend. Not in that road.
Gage!
I corralled him for you, missus.
Thank you so much.
Number 7 brings us back to the master of horror with Pet Sematary, which is based on Stephen King's novel. And this delved into the themes of grief and the unnatural. That idea of a burial ground that brings the dead back, though not quite right, was pretty chilling. And the scenes with that toddler Gage, they were so scary. I mean, who didn't watch where they were walking with a bed, worried that something was going to reach out and cut their ankles? I mean, Jesus. Number 6 lands on Friday the 13th, which set the stage for countless slasher films. In this Friday the 13th, they took us to Camp Crystal Lake, where a mysterious killer stalked camp counselors. The suspense and gruesome deaths were so shocking. Even though Jason wasn't the killer in this one, the film's twist at the end left everybody stunned. And who isn't scared when they hear, kill, 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 kill. Oh, God, I hated that sound.
The duration of the event was 7 hours.
7 hours for what?
For the vehicle to complete the distance. Of course, this would never register on the naked eye. But I have it recorded on time-lapse camera. It's fantastic.
They're here at number 5 with Poltergeist. This movie made me wary of televisions and static. The haunting of an average suburban family felt really too close to home. Those chilling scenes with the clown and that tree were nightmare fuel. And by the way, there's a long-standing urban legend about a poltergeist curse due to untimely death of cast members in the years following the film's release. Creepy. Number 4 brings us Aliens, which is James Cameron's sequel to Alien, which ramped up the action but sure didn't skimp on the scares. Those xenomorphs were more numerous and more aggressive. The claustrophobic setting and relentless tension kept me on the edge of my seat. Ripley's battle with that alien queen was terrifying and exhilarating. And did you know that Sigourney Weaver received an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress for this role? Which, by the way, is a rare honor for a performance in a sci-fi action film.
Where's your pass?
Screw your pass.
Hey, Nancy. No running in the hallway.
Number 3 brings us A Nightmare on Elm Street, and we got introduced to Freddy Krueger, who turned our dreams into his nightmares. The concept that you could be killed in your sleep was just absolutely horrifying. The line between reality and dreams was completely blurred, making it hard to feel safe even after the movie ended. Freddy's disfigured appearance and twisted sense of humor made for some unforgettable villainy. And this film marked the debut of a young Johnny Depp, who played one of Freddy's victims.
This is pure nonsense. Doesn't prove a thing.
I thought you'd feel that way, Gary. You were the only one that could have got to that blood. We'll do you last.
My number 2 is The Thing by John Carpenter, which was an absolute masterpiece of paranoia and body horror. And his choice of the Antarctic setting amplified the isolation and desperation you felt for the characters. The creature's ability to mimic any living being to sow distrust among the characters. The special effects were absolutely groundbreaking and grotesque, making the horror tangible. Now, despite its now classic status, this film was poorly received upon release, partly because it opened shortly after E.T., which portrayed aliens in a bit more friendly light. And finally, for number 1, I've got The Shining, which Stanley Kubrick took Stephen King's amazing book and made it into a haunting exploration of madness and supernatural. The eerie atmosphere of that Overlook Hotel and the unsettling imagery and Jack's descent into insanity terrified me and everyone I knew. I mean, the scenes of the twins in the hallway and the river of blood from the elevators, they're just etched into my memory. And I know Stephen King didn't even like this movie, but it was awesome. So looking back, these movies scared me not just because of jump scares or the gore, but because they tapped into my deeper fears, the loss of control, the safety of home being violated, or the unknown lurking just out of sight. In the 80s, we weren't bombarded with horror content like we are today, so each of these films felt like it had an impact. And they shaped our culture. They introduced us to iconic characters like Freddy Krueger, and they set the standard for horror cinema. Watching them in theaters or drive-ins, this was an event that bonded us in our fear. Now, do any of these movies haunt your memories? Or is there another 80s horror flick that kept you up all night? I'd love to hear your thoughts or your stories in the comment below. And I want to thank you for joining me on this terrifying trip down memory lane. And if you enjoyed the video, I'd love it if you gave it a thumbs up and subscribe to 80s Vault for more content just like this. So until next time, sweet dreams, and don't forget to check under the bed.